What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Meaning of Podcast. This week, I'm doing it solo. Unfortunately, Andres and Sabrina are unavailable to join us, but we do have a very special guest, the world-renowned creator of one of the most popular YouTube channels, I think, of all time. Really changed the game, and an author of one of the most incredible book series out there right now, the Ables. We are talking with Jeremy Scott, one of the original creators of CinemaSins. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeremy.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored. You guys have talked to some heavy hitters on this show, and I'm thrilled to be included among them. So,
well, this is definitely an honor, and I'm super happy to talk to you. Mainly because, for one, as myself and a lot of people I'm sure watching are big fans of you as a YouTube channel. From CinemaSins and Everything Wrong With series. But I am a big fan of the Abel's books. I love superhero stories, and I love that it's like this progressive kind of story about disabilities and, taking your disabilities and able to create something greater as a team. And it's not about the individual. And I think all of these themes are so great and universal and important. And I'm a really big fan of them.
Thank you.
Yeah, but of course, before we jump in to talk about the Ables, I do want to kind of talk to you a little bit, Jeremy, because like I said, big fan of CinemaSins. You're kind of one of the early kind of people in the movie YouTube space. Tell me a little bit about that. How did CinemaSins start, and how does it feel to have this kind of reverence inside the community?
It's never not going to feel weird to have 8 million subscribers. That's surreal. And I don't think I'll ever get used to that. And if I do, you should punch me. But my buddy Chris and I have known each other since 1999. We were both assistant managers at a movie theater in Nashville, Tennessee, around about the time The Phantom Menace came out. And so we had been watching movies together because we were both projectionists. And this is back in the era of film, which makes me sound older than I really am because it wasn't that long ago. Most theaters these days are digital. But back in the days of film, they would ship canisters to the theater, and projectionists would have to put the film reels together and build the movie. And then you were required by your job to watch the movie to make sure there weren't scratches or splices that were out of sync. And so we bonded over years, midnight on Thursday night, watching these movies we'd built. And we were both big Mystery Science Theater fans. And so we would just lob our own jokes at the screen the whole time. And that's really where it all began, even though we didn't know it at the time. Then you flash forward to 2012, and Chris and I were both writing for a website that talked about video marketing and video codecs and everything about online video. And I was writing a weekly column about viral videos and what made this video go viral, and just trying to analyze sort of how things got popular. And I just got the bug, man. I think if YouTube had been around when I was in high school, I would have been making videos, but it wasn't. And, I saw people like Freddie W. And Corridor Digital making awesome videos, honest trailers and Screen Junkies guys. And I wanted to do it myself. I wanted to try and be funny about movies. And so we swung and missed 2 or 3 different times with some ideas for movie channels. I think Chris's favorite was the one where we reviewed movies weeks before they came out, and we were just making stuff up that was all lies. And nobody ever watched them, but the people who did thought we were being serious and just thought we were morons. And it just never panned out. And this was just our 3rd or 4th try. We just were like, what if we, counted up, quote unquote, the sins in a movie as a way to be nitpicky and observational, give it a score at the end, and try and talk as fast as possible. Of course, we've evolved over the years. I talk a little slower now, and the videos have gotten a little longer, but the point is still the same, observational humor and nitpicking for fun. It's just the way that we express our love for movies, and we're glad that so many people enjoy them and enjoy watching movies the same way we do.
Yeah, no, it's funny you talk about the length of your videos changing. I remember watching one of your first videos, the everything wrong with the Amazing Spider-Man. I believe it was only like 3 minutes, right? Like,
Yeah, it was under
uh,
3 minutes.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But now the videos are like longer, 20 minutes, a lot of times.
Mm.
And I'm sure, the algorithm, the YouTube algorithm kind of rewards longer content anyway. So, but do you find more joy in being able to tell more jokes and being able to have a little bit longer? Do you enjoy like the shorter videos that you guys did in the beginning a little bit more?
I got to be honest. I mean, we've lucked into being slightly ahead of a couple of algorithm changes. Like
Mm,
when we started, we thought um, attention spans were going to be very short. So we were desperate for the first 6 months to keep everything under 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And then we got to a movie, I think it was The Room, where we just you
yeah.
can't nitpick or make fun of that movie in under 4 minutes. And we ended up with something that was over 10 minutes. And it was every bit as popular as anything else we'd ever done. And that was sort of a light bulb. And we began to experiment because we'd always been struggling in the early days to chop our arguments down into the most succinct, quick, bite-sized version. And it's not very nuanced, right? It's very
Mm,
famously in the Avengers video, the second video we ever made, when Tony Stark is in space and he falls back through the wormhole. The phrasing was, there's no gravity in space, but and of course, there is gravity in space. There's gravity all over space, but there shouldn't have been enough gravity in that area for him to fall down through the hole. So
mm,
we started realizing if we give ourselves 2 sentences instead of 5 words, we can make our point better and still be funny.
mm,
And so I think it's a much more comfortable experience for us to do it this way. And then a couple years after we did that, the YouTube algorithm was like, "Hey, longer content is good."
mm,
And then a couple years after that, the algorithm was like, non-news content, more evergreen content is good. And we were like,
mm.
hey, lucky for us, we didn't start a news show.
Yeah,
You know,
right, right.
but if you live your YouTube life trying to react to the algorithm, I think you're just going to go insane. You should just make content that you like and hope people will join you.
Right, right, right. And yeah, I think a lot of people have joined you on your journey. I mean, like you said, 8 million subscribers. You've been doing this for I don't know how many years. I mean, I remember literally just as in high school watching your videos and just like
Wow.
loving them and enjoying them. So, but yeah, there's definitely, like you said, there's been algorithm changes. There's been kind of an evolution in a YouTube movie space in general, where, like you said, there is kind of this like moving away from news and all that kind of stuff and moving into more succinct criticism, more
Mm-hmm.
about the individual movies and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a good path for video criticism to go, for movie YouTube criticism to go? Because for me, I know, being a Schmoes No fan and being a fan of CinemaSins and Jeremy Johns and Chris Stuckman and all these channels, Screen Junkies, like you said, being a fan of all of those, I've definitely have seen that, a lot of the news programming is kind of faded away. A lot of the more modern stuff, a lot more trendy stuff is kind of faded away. More towards just enjoying the audience and engaging with the audience on a more personal level.
Sure.
Have you observed that too? Or
I think I think it's going to fragment for the most part. I think they're pushing pretty hard. YouTube is for more and more live content. They added the live option. They've got they want to compete with Twitch and whatnot, but now they've had added premieres. I'm not sure how many of your listeners or viewers are want to talk YouTube shop, but they've now added another layer to premieres, which is like an instant premiere, where you can like notify all your subscribers you're about to go live with a video. It's very clear to me on the back end that YouTube wants creators to do as much live content as possible, but then the algorithm for related videos on the side and with search doesn't really reward that kind of content yet. It rewards the kind of content that isn't tied to a specific event or moment. And so if you were to do, who is it that does the box office show that's really good? Is it Harloff or is it Merle?
Dan
Dan
Merle,
Merle.
yeah.
So if you were to do a box office show like that, which is really informative, you need to push for live viewership. And YouTube, I think, will reward those viewers more than they would catalog viewers. But you're also not going to get a lot of catalog viewers on what YouTube thinks is out-of-date content.
Right, and I mean that's what Schmoes ends up becoming Schmodown, which ends up becoming SCN, which I now work for, and we live stream every single day. We just came off of a live stream today, actually. So yeah, that's essentially what they like, pushing the live streams. They like, and that does great for them. But do you see any kind of future with CinemaSins having that? I know you guys started your own podcast with that's available on
Yep.
all platforms for podcasting. But I know that's kind of. Would you ever consider doing a live podcast? Would you ever consider doing? I don't know if there's any sort of way the CinemaSins like can adapt to the live format. But have you ever thought about that and considered that?
We are we are interested in exploring this instant premiere thing to see if it can bring more viewers on the day of launch or at launch. One of the things that it does is it creates this chat column that can be live while people are watching the video. And if the creator is in that chat talking back, there's some data that suggests that fans really like that. And I have a pipe dream to literally do a Sins video live, and I think it would be wild. But we would have to write everything in advance. We would have to print out the text that would go on screen. We would have to have somebody with the bell to ding, and I would have to narrate live, and somebody would have to censor the swears live, and somebody would have to hold up images of the movie to there, and we could do like a Zoom Sins video live. And I think, honestly, the more we mess up, the more fun it's going to be for everybody watching, and then it would live there for the back catalog for forever. I don't know how close we are to that, but I would love to see that happen, and I talk about it often. So
That's sweet, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, yeah. I mean, live content, all of that, all kinds of YouTube stuff and changes and whatnot. But just going back to a couple more things about CinemaSins before we leave off here. I know that a lot of people have criticized your channel or criticized everything that you guys have done. In terms of what it represents in terms of the film criticism space. I know you've responded to it a number of times on both your podcast and on your YouTube channel, so I'm not necessarily looking for a response. But I am fascinated to know. I personally think whether there's a good impact or a bad impact, making an impact regardless is something worth valuing and worth cherishing. Do you think? Do you regardless of the criticisms and acknowledging the huge fan base that you have, do you think overall your legacy is overwhelmingly positive in the YouTube community or negative?
well, I think it's more positive than negative, at least from what I can see. But
Absolutely, yeah.
the truth is, you stop 100 average people in a shopping mall, and maybe 3 of them would have ever even heard of CinemaSins.
Yeah.
So I try not to think too much about my legacy.
Okay.
This has been a really fun job. We now have 6 employees, so we're able to provide work for people that they can then provide homes and food for their families. We make ourselves laugh. And I will be honest, I guess I was naive. We never thought people would think these videos were serious. We never thought that. And some people do, and then the people that really hate us because they think the people that think it's real then go out and parrot all these opinions in film discourse, and that we're somehow damaging film discourse. And we're making fun of the thing you think we are. That's really the only thing I would say. We're not the guy in his mother's basement who thinks he's a know-it-all and who's a little pervert who likes pretty actresses. We're making fun of a very specific type of criticism that existed long before us and long before YouTube and long before the internet. One of my favorite things to point out is this: when Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan was coming out, the fans heard rumors that they were going to kill Spock. And there's this letter you can find if you Google that's signed by all these Star Trek fans that are like, if you do this, we will never watch another movie again. You are killing the one character that makes the blah, blah, blah. It's the same kind of toxic, know-it-all fandom. It's been there for as long as films have existed. And this is just our way of having fun and poking a little fun at that. And we really feel bad if anybody gets angry about it at the end of the day, because I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree. And, you mentioned that point. I never really thought about that because we hear stories about, like you said, the Star Trek situation. We hear a lot of things about, Tim Burton's Batman when that came out, about
Hmm.
fans writing letters to Michael Keaton.
Yep.
And there's been multiple examples of fans having backlash even before the days of YouTube. So
Yep.
to blame the toxicity of YouTube solely on CinemaSins, but I think you probably get a lot of that target because you're the biggest, right? And
Right.
usually the biggest would kind of get that, and but I think for people who are smart, they're able to delineate the comedy versus the actual criticism. So I can 100% understand that.
Yeah.
But yeah, but do you think that, but obviously, like, as creators, you can't be responsible for the fan base that, like, you create and everything like that. But I think what you have managed to do is utilize your fan base in order to create more appreciation for cinema and also to shine light on your work as an author, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long have for one, I want to talk to you a little bit about, we talked about how you had your background in film and everything like that, but and getting into the CinemaSins business, but what's your background with literature? Have you always been a big fan of books and reading and all that kind of stuff, or?
Yeah, I've always been a fan of books. I read a lot growing up, a lot of Michael Crichton, a lot of John Grisham, a lot of Tom Clancy. I didn't probably read enough classics. I read a lot of popular literature. But I was always a writer. I was always writing. When I was young and I was taking piano lessons, I was writing songs. And when I got to college and started appreciating film, I was writing screenplays. And yeah, somewhere around 2009, I got this idea for a group of disabled superheroes. And I told my wife about it, and I wrote a little chapter out and filed it away, and it wouldn't leave me alone. And I didn't really write it in earnest until CinemaSins had been going for a couple of years. We had over 1 million subscribers, and I realized, oh God, I've got an audience here that may be interested in this. Maybe I should finish this book and put it out there. And that's what started that journey as an author. And now I've got the third Abel's book coming up next month. The fourth is due next year, and I'll publish 2 other books that are unrelated between now and next year. So I am writing my butt off.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Oh, that's amazing to hear. Are you involved in the? I know it's you and Chris is a collaboration for the CinemaSins videos, but how much of the involvement do you take in terms of writing? And I know obviously you do voiceover, and Chris probably does the editing. But like, how much responsibility do y'all share with the writing of those videos?
I took about a month and a half off to finish up a non-Abel's book that's due next month. But for the most part, I write as much as anyone on the team. Now we have 2 side channels, TV Sins and music video Sins, and 6 total people that work and write for us. So we all share responsibilities across all those channels and write about the same amount as everybody else. I do the narration. I handle publishing the videos. Chris sets the schedule and chooses who's going to write on which movie and which movie is going to be sinned. And we actually have a management company, a YouTube management company, an MCN they call them, that does most of the editing for us at this point. And we're able to give feedback, but spend our time writing instead of editing.
That's awesome. That's sweet. Speaking of which, you reminded, I didn't even get to asking you the question about your other channels, but you do have multiple other spin-off channels, TV Sins, music video Sins. I know you used to have brand Sins back in the day too. I know that whole that transformation and doing stuff outside of movies must have been a big jump. Did that require? I'm sure it required a lot of discussion, but what did that take a lot of confidence to take that step outside, to take those new risks in terms of stepping outside of the movie lane and challenging yourselves to do other stuff like TV and like music videos?
We were just kind of feeling our way around, and we launched Brand Sins. I think we were pretty optimistic, but it didn't work. And we haven't, I think that channel still exists. We haven't been affiliated with that channel in 5 years. We gave it over to the people that were making those videos at the time, and they gave it over to somebody else. And it wasn't received very well. So it informed the next channel, which was Music Video Sins, which was a lot shorter, and the content. A music video is just an outrageous piece of content that's easy to make fun of.
Right.
And then we just did the same format instead of trying a new format, and it was much better received. TV Sins we always wanted to do, but we just didn't have time. We didn't have time to write. And so that once we finally got to where we were hiring new writers, and Aaron and Jonathan both kind of came to us and said, we really want to do TV Sins. And so kept the same format, but now we've got Aaron narrating those. And now Barrett is narrating the music video Sins because I was getting vocal burnout. And we are launching next month commercial Sins for TV commercials, which will be the same format, very bite-sized, 2.5-minute videos, and Chris is going to narrate those. So
that's awesome. I love to hear Chris' voice because I listen to your podcast, and he's an unspoken voice, man. He's a really intelligent dude.
Oh yeah, you're not kidding.
Yeah, so I'm happy about that. But going back to Abel's, we're talking about making those jumps between TV and music video Sins. Making that jump from YouTube personality to author. Like you said, you already had an audience, but I'm sure that even when you announced your book, you might have seen some audience kind of not necessarily backlash, but they might have questioned like what why are you stepping outside of your thing? Like stick to being a YouTuber. That's what a lot of people hear often when they try and step out, right? Yeah. Did you feel more motivated to step outside of the YouTube space because of how successful you were? Were you trying to challenge yourself? Was that something you're interested in? And for somebody like Sabrina, who is our co-host for First Cut, she's actually an aspiring author and writer as well. What would you say to people who are looking to who are talent, YouTube personalities who are looking to make that jump into authorship and writing?
I mean, a lot of YouTubers' first books are memoirs, right? Which makes perfect sense. It's easy to. They tell you when you want to write what you know. Well, there's nothing more write what you know than writing a memoir. This is my life. This is what happened to me. I have my own memoir about my own story that's coming out next year. It's just not where I chose to start because before YouTube even existed for me, I had this idea and it was dying to get out of me. And I do like a challenge. I'll be honest. I'm disabled. Writing about disabled characters. I have mental health, anxiety, and depression issues, and so do my characters, and it's become very important to me. But the very first reason I started writing was the challenge of writing a blind main character. The idea that I would be limited in what I could do to let the audience know what was going on around. I like a challenge. It motivates me. And YouTube is still very challenging for me. I don't want to give the wrong impression. But I would think I was always going to try some other stuff, and I still will down the road. There's a rap song that I made 5 years ago that you'll never hear, that will never hear the light of day, but I tried it, and I'm glad I did. So
yeah. Well, I would love to hear that rap song. But no, that's really great to hear because I feel like that's what creators and creatives need to do. That's what I feel like in order to stay fresh, in order to stay on your toes, having that creative itch and just doing different things is important. So going into the book, you talk about Philip, who's your main character, being a blind 12-year-old who, in this world, it's particularly in this town full of superheroes, right? Yeah. Or called custodians, where they are, essentially his parents are two of the most, or his father, I should say, is super powerful being. He lost his mother. Talk to me about the identity that you see yourself in the character. Obviously, with the disabilities and the mental health stuff that you talked about previously, you obviously identify with that. But is there other aspects like with with the fatherhood and the familial relationships and the friend relationships? Because when we meet the rest of the crew, there's kind of a little conflict making friends there and getting comfortable with each other. Is that something that is relatable for you personally, or?
Oh man, everything in this book that's not fantastical is grounded in something that was real to me. The father and mother characters are very much patterned after my own parents. The father cracks a joke in the book where the kid asks him to make him a piece of toast, and the father points his finger and says, "Zap, you're a piece of toast." My dad made that exact joke every breakfast when I was growing up. There's a small town pizza place that they go to frequently throughout all the books. And indeed, the entire small town they live in, called Freepoint, is modeled after a small town I grew up in middle school that had 2,000 people and one stoplight. And I feel so much more comfortable writing when I'm doing this write what you know thing, where I'm imbuing each character or setting with something that was very real to me. I think even if the reader isn't conscious of that authenticity, it comes through subconsciously in the writing, and it makes me a more confident writer because you can't tell me it doesn't look like this. I know it looks like this. I'm basing it off a real thing. And I'm not blind. I have more than 50% hearing loss. That's my physical disability. And I talked to some blind people. I wanted to get some perspective to understand better a disability that I don't have myself. But where I could, everything is based on something. And Philip is in large part, me. I guess it's very selfish to make yourself the hero of your book. But I think a lot of people do this when they write. Their main character takes on some of their qualities, and then I would say even his two best friends, Bentley and Henry, are just other shades of my own personality. Henry is the super sarcastic, deadpan joker, and Bentley is the guy who really wants to prove he's smart and doesn't want to be considered not smart. And so he wants to come up with the plan or come up with the answer. So those three together are like all me. If you wrap them all up, I'm a little bit of each of them.
Yeah, I love Bentley. I love Bentley's character. I think he's super cool, super rad. And I just feel like I feel like, he has this, like, he has that, like, kind of Batman level, kind of like level of genius, even inside of like this 12-year-old kid. Yeah. And by the time he gets to the second book, he's already making like these super crazy like inventions with the glasses and the opening sequence with the plane is absolutely amazing. But also to talk about Henry real quick, I also love Henry because he's a young African American kid who's I'm so bad at pronouncing words. I'm so sorry.
You're good. It's telepathy.
Telepathy. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry. He has telepathy. Like you said, he has that kind of dry humor and all that kind of stuff. And he's kind of, like you said, resembles a little bit of your personality. But he's also wheelchair bound, which I think is, all of these characters, including Donnie, to some extent, they all deal with their own physical or mental issues and disabilities, but they all find a way to overcome, and they all find a way to embrace their powers and to enhance their abilities and working together and make all their abilities work as one. That kind of theme we see a lot in superhero movies like the Avengers or like X-Men, and like a number of other superhero stories. But that disability angle and that isolation angle, how they all feel kind of isolated in their own worlds and end up coming together, I think is something even more powerful. Tell me a little bit about that, like this overall message of unity and communication and teamwork to overcome this overarching villain.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm not a parent. I don't have children, but one of the things I think we do that's dangerous in America is we tell our children, you can be anything you want if you put your mind to it, which is simply not true. It's simply not true for people in poverty. It's simply not true for people of certain minorities. It's certainly not true for disabled people. There's a better way to say what you're trying to say. And that's, don't let anybody tell you who you're going to be. Don't let anybody define you. All
Mm-hmm.
right. And that is a better way of, then I don't want to fill any kid's head with, oh, well, I'm going to be Iron Man. Well, that may not be possible if, you're in a wheelchair. And so this is just an extreme version of this. I'll give you an example. In Spider-Man Homecoming, when Tony Stark is telling Peter, don't be a hero. You're just a kid. Leave this to the big guys. It's hard for me because I'm like, yeah, he's 15, but he's a superhero. He has powers. He's super strong. When in my books the adults tell the disabled kids you can't do this, I needed it to be more real. I needed it to be a gut punch, something that they would actually say to a disabled kid. Imagine being told you're a superhero and you're going to superhero high school and you walk in the first day and you're in the special ed class. It's like complete disrespect and the lowest of expectations. And so I want these kids to teach readers, don't let anybody define who you're going to be. Maybe they can't be full-fledged heroes on their own, but maybe together they can be even more than that. And that's sort of what I was going for there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I thought it was well communicated. I thought it was brilliant. And yeah, I think, like you said, that the idea that, yeah, it's not an individual thing for everybody. Like, not everybody has the same opportunities, not everybody has the same resources. And that kind of goes into my kind of next question, which goes into the setting, right?
Sure.
Which goes into this fantastical world where there are multiple superheroes, this kind of community of superheroes, their superhero school, and yet they're still dealing with the same problems that normal people are dealing with, almost to a more exaggerated level. Even though our protagonist Philip is super powered, he's blind, so he's still not cut out for a lot of the regular teams to be on the teams with the other students. And even in the rest of society, and even touched on, particularly in the second book, how much custodians are kind of looked at as outsiders, and how much they're kind of going as far as to being like banned from using their powers. So kind of talk to me about incorporating those real world issues and situations into something so whimsical and fantastical, and if there's any other deeper meanings that maybe I'm not touching on or that you wanted to elaborate on.
Sure. I feel like a lot of superhero stories inevitably get to how would the government react, right? And in whether you're talking about like the comics with Civil War, where the government wanted to, know the real name of every superhero and have them on a registry, or you have, the X-Men in the movies where they wanted to like vaccinate them and cure them of their superpowers. And so I felt like I had to do something that hadn't been done before. And I don't know that I succeeded. But in the second book, there's a sort of an internment camp kind of section,
Right.
where a lot of these custodian heroes have been rounded up and they're in this prison where they're not able to use their powers, or they'll feel excruciating pain. And it's an attempt by the government in my book to subdue what they see as a threat to their own power. And I think there are plenty of parallels to what you might have seen in the real world over the last 5 to 10 years. But I think a lot of it is just humanity. It's just humanity. If you, I tried to make superheroes feel as real as possible, in that I'm not afraid to kill characters. I'm not afraid to injure characters, because I truly believe if you decide to be a hero, whether that means flying and stopping a missile or helping an old lady across the road, there are risks. And the missile might explode and kill you, and a car might drive by and hit you when you're helping the old lady across the road. It's accepting those risks and consequences and doing the action anyway that makes somebody a hero. And so I just tried to take it out to a logical standpoint, that if superheroes were real and were suddenly discovered to be among us, I think the government, at least in America, would wig the hell out and try and do whatever they could to control the situation as fast as possible. And so that's the way I went with it. That's the direction I wrote. And I don't know that there's too much more of a deeper meaning. When Americans put Japanese citizens in internment camps in World War II, there is a cyclical humanity cruelty that I think is maybe being hinted at. But symbolically, there's, I don't get too much deeper than the titles. So, strings is meant to both refer to a reveal late in the book, as well as, the ties between people, the relationships that we have. The Currents is the third book. There's a lot of water and electricity in that book, but also the currents that drive your life. If you hop in a raft on a river with no oar, where are you going to end up? It's going to be where the current takes you, and you chose that current to a large degree. So I don't get much deeper symbolically than the titles.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I mean, and I think the books kind of speak for themselves, right? I think through your writing and through the characters and through the evolution of this world and through of this society, we're kind of learning more and more as it unfolds, right? I think that's what's really exciting, especially about book 2. I'm super excited about book 3, but I think I personally, when I read fantasy books, and I enjoy fantasy books, I personally like to visualize them cinematically, right? Like how I would see them in a movie or TV, something like that. Have you thought about that? Have you thought about how you would like to see this adapted in some way?
Well, here's the thing. I don't know if I'm a good writer. I really don't. I think these stories are really good ideas. And I may, at my best, be a decent storyteller. But yeah, I don't know. Ask the question again. I lost my train of thought.
Well, I mean, in terms of adapting the right?
I tried to write it very cinematically. That's how I love movies. There's a big climax at the end of both the first 2 books that I think, hopefully, if I've done my job, you're seeing in big widescreen IMAX in your head. And I think about it all the time. And there are conversations that happen every now and then with places, but nothing has happened yet. I think it would make a fantastic 10-episode series on like a Netflix or HBO, where each book could be its own season. I think it would make an excellent film that would, it's we'll see what happens. I never set out to make a franchise. I always had 4 books in mind, but the plan was, let's write the first and see what happens.
Right.
It's sold enough that I wrote the second, and here we are. But I would obviously love to see it turned into a movie. I don't know a lot of current child actors' names, and you would have to cast children in at least the first book adaptation. But I have always kind of pictured Gary Oldman as the villain, Finch, the guy with the scar who has the pipe he's always smoking. I think he would chew that up. I think any writer who writes fiction can't help but daydream about a movie or a TV show and who might star in it. I think it's just natural.
Right. It's funny because we interviewed Lindsay Ellis, and she had her book Axioms In, and she talked about how she wanted to do a miniseries for her series as well. So not a miniseries, a series, it's kind of funny. We could talk a little bit about general movies and stuff now too.
Sure.
How much how kind of the conversation around movies is kind of navigated away from the prestige that we kind of saw, in previous eras and previous decades, and even as early as maybe a couple years ago. Now the transition towards TV and the prestige of TV and television has kind of overtaken our media space. Do you think that have you noticed that yourself? And do you like where we're headed in terms of TVs versus movies and all that? So
you can go back. I am 45. You can go back to the 90s when Friends and ER were huge hits on NBC, and almost every actor on those shows tried to cross over into movies, right? Clooney started with Peacekeeper or One Fine Day, a couple of misses. Then he made the Tarantino zombie flick. But Clooney is as A-list as it gets today, right? Jennifer Aniston had a couple of movies there. Matthew LeBlanc did the Monkey baseball movie. They all tried to cross over. And as you said, currently, film stars are crossing over to prestige television products, not necessarily network television, not even necessarily cable in general, but prestige event series. So stuff like Fargo, Watchmen. You're seeing A-list actors like turning down film work. Kevin Costner has been doing this Yellowstone show on Paramount Network for 3.5 years now. Part of it is the money. The actors are going to go where the money is. But I think the biggest draw is the talent. And the actors are going to go where the writing and directing talent are. So Yellowstone on Paramount is made by Tyler, forget his name, crud. He made Hell or High Water with Chris Pine and
Oh,
Ben
I know.
Foster
I know
and
you're
Wind
talking about
River.
too.
Well, he's the creator of Yellowstone. So Costner is following the content creator as much as he's following the money to Yellowstone.
Tyler Sheridan.
Tyler Sheridan, thank you.
Yes.
He saw Wind River, and well, I think Tyler Sheridan even wrote that Denis Villeneuve.
Sicario. He did write Sicario.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and Noah Hawley was making Fargo for the longest time. So I just think it's a pendulum. And right now, people are spending their money on streaming services and not movie theaters. And it was that way by and large before the pandemic. They were still going to theaters, and Avengers movies were still making $1 billion. But the pandemic has only further cemented that the prestige projects of the next 5 years are going to be on streaming services, whether they're films or series. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of 2020, the pandemic, talking about movies in general, we haven't seen too many movies. That movie theaters haven't been open. There's been few that have done premium VOD releases, but not anything big, and we haven't seen any big splashes so far this year. Is that, for me? I know I'm hating it. Like it's pretty sad. It's upsetting to me. I saw Tenet, drove out for a few hours to see Tenet. I'm in California, went out to Vegas to see it. But that's really the only thing that I saw since March. And I saw King of Staten Island on premium VOD. But besides that, it's been all streaming movies. How have your movie consumption been affected during this whole pandemic thing?
I'll tell you what, the first of all, the content is just different, right?
Yeah.
There's anything with a budget of 200 million or more has been pushed except for Tenet. Mm-hmm. And Tenet wasn't pushed because it was Nolan putting his foot down. But everything else, Mulan got eventually VOD. Now Wonder Woman's being pushed. Everything's getting pushed that cost 200 million because they want to make their money back. Right. But even pre-pandemic, I didn't go to the physical movie theater as often as people probably think I do. I would say maybe once a month.
Oh, wow.
I have pretty bad anxiety, particularly in public places. And so the movie theater can be a place where I can have an anxiety event or attack. And I have greatly limited the number of times I go, and I just, buy Blu-rays like crazy as soon as those movies come out. And I have a big TV at home and a nice sound system. And the other thing for me is captions. I'm half deaf. And so now there is one theater near me, a Regal, that has a headset for captions. And it's the coolest technology because it's clear glasses, and you assign it an auditorium, and it shoots this green laser from the rims onto the glass so that only I see it and nobody else is disrupted. But it hurts like hell to wear for 2 hours. It's really heavy and tight, and it's just not an ideal situation just yet. So I'm like you. I haven't been to a theater since March. The last movie I saw was Bloodshot.
That was a lot of people's last movie. Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of VOD stuff. I really like Palm Springs on Hulu with Andy Samberg. But yeah, I'm bummed, but it hasn't impacted me as much as it has the guy or girl who goes every single weekend, which is most of YouTube movie reviewers. They might even go twice a weekend. And, I just happen to already be a little bit of a hermit anyway. So
Yeah, yeah, I feel you. I mean, yeah, I'm definitely, especially when I was at USC, I used to go to movie theaters like so often. Me and some friends. I was in a fraternity, Delta Kappa Alpha,
oh
and
yeah.
which is like a film fraternity. So
Mm.
we would always just take trips to the movies and stuff like that. So that was always fun. But you miss that experience. But at the same time, I've been kind of getting comfortable with the at home thing. Like I've been loving movies like King of Staten Island.
Hmm.
I saw Mulan too. Wasn't the greatest, but like the fact that I got to watch it instead of waiting another year for it did make me a little happy.
Yeah.
Part of me does wish that they would just put a lot of these movies on streaming services now instead of waiting years and then just re-release them later.
Yeah.
I'm sure, but for someone like you, and speaking of the closed caption thing, because I never really considered that, from the movie theater experience. Is that something you find like is an overwhelmingly positive benefit of streaming and of all of this premium VOD stuff? That you
Sure.
can watch these new release movies and still be able to get them at home and watch them comfortably?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I mean, I can't go back to not using captions anymore. And it was a sort of a combination of my hearing getting worse and writing CinemaSins, because you have to use the captions when you write the way we do to know for sure what a character's saying, or at least as close to for sure as you can. The only thing that I can't get captions on that is still very frustrating for me are the screeners for review.
Yeah.
And so we are fortunate enough to be sent many of these opportunities to see movies before they're released so that we can review them. And they don't send physical screeners very much anymore. They send you links. But I have not found a single one that has captions, which is frustrating because I know the script already exists. The text for captions exists somewhere. They just have not imported it into this file. And that's frustrating because a lot of our podcast reviews of movies are Chris and Jonathan or Chris and Aaron or Chris and Barrett because I wasn't able to watch it. I hope for a future, I tweet about this often, where even the screeners will have captions so that people with hearing loss can review the same day everybody else can.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I don't want to hold up too much more of your time, Jeremy. Thank you so much for
Sure.
joining us on this episode of The Meaning of, talking about Abels. Again, people, if you haven't checked out these books, they're absolutely amazing. If you're in for a fun superhero like coming of age story, that's fun, but also gives you some great messages for disability and how to handle bullying and losing a parent and all of these really great themes that are incorporated into these books. Be sure to check that out. Jeremy, I know you're the third one you said is coming out next month. Do you mind previewing it for us a little bit?
Sure. The third one jumps ahead a few more years in time, and they're in their second year of college now. And some mysterious entity is draining major cities of power, and they go off investigating who's hoarding the energy and why. And along the way, Philip is still dealing with a lot of PTSD and panic attacks from the events of the first two books. So he's seeing a therapist. I just hope that this book is about relationships the way that I want it to be. The first one is the setup, the origin story. The second one is, in my mind, the action book. And the third one is more about, there's action, don't get me wrong. But the intent is to remind people about the relationships in their lives and how that informs the current your life takes.
That's beautiful. And I hope people read it and are able to take that from it. Again, people, be sure to check out the Abels series. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining us and breaking it down for us. Where can people find you?
Oh, they can find me on Twitter at CinemaSins, and they can find the book at cinemasins.com/book.
Awesome. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at DirectorRB3. Be sure to follow us on our social medias at First Cut TMO. And be sure to subscribe to the First Cut YouTube channel and to the Meaning of Podcast, iTunes and podcast feeds available everywhere, courtesy of Anchor. Thank you so much, everybody. This is RB3. That's Jeremy. This has been the Meaning of Podcast. Have a good one, y'all.